For better or for worse, those are statements that we normally hear every time there is a wedding and a marriage commences after. However, it has not been the case in many others, and of course research has it in a lot of articles written and a lot of people commenting that, listen, marriage is no longer working, marriage is working, and there's been all these talks going around. Today we want to discuss about marriage and some of the red flags you should watch, maybe in case you're having challenges in your marriage, and many other examples to give. And to help us answer these questions and really realize this or have a discussion with this is none other than Dr. Chip Kingsbury. Let's take a look at his profile, then we'll be back to discuss this topic.
Dr. Chip Kingsbury is a missionary faculty at Dexter University. He has directed the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning since inception. He has lived in Kenya since 1980 and together with his wife have 3 children, all born and raised in Kenya. Chip and his wife Chari operate Ukarimu Ministries and Ukarimu House. This is the home and ministry center opposite the Dexter University Athi River campus. The purpose of Ukarimu House is to be a friendly and hospitable student community for Dexter University. It is a place of Christian nurture and for supportive mentoring and counseling. It is used to facilitate the integration of faith and learning through reflective praxis. It is a place of joy, excitement, and fellowship, and to experience and be part of a godly family. Chip holds a PhD in faculty development from Florida State University, as well as an MA in intercultural studies, a BA in history, and a diploma in Bible.
Welcome back, Dr. Karibu sana.
Thank you.
Divorce, marriage, and the rest. That's a topic that is quite hot. In fact, when I threw the question on social media, I got lots of responses. But just before then, it's good to really identify with you. And I should ask by saying, you must love Kenya. You've been here more than I've lived.
Yeah, I've lived in Kenya for 36 years. So this is home. A couple of years ago, I applied for citizenship, and nothing's happening. If you've got some viewers out there who have some influence somewhere and they'd like to help this guy become a Kenyan, I'd really appreciate any help. But nothing's happening with those files. They just sit down there at Nyayo House.
Wow.
But yeah, this is home. Our children were all born and raised here, and so we're not planning on going anywhere else unless Kenya has other ideas for us.
Yeah, and I know you can speak Kikuyu and Swahili as well, but that's another topic for another day. So how long have you been married?
My wife and I are coming up in just a few weeks on our 40th anniversary.
Pretty impressive.
So
40 years.
Yes. She's been married for 40 and I've been married for 40. So together we've been married for 80.
Okay. 80 years together. Okay. Whatever the math is, it's just 40 for me. You know, I interviewed a gentleman called Francis Moroki here, and he was very bitter because, you know, he was divorced after 24 years of being married. And of course, his reason was, you know, the wife became wealthier in a way, and he lost his job, and there were all those differences, and they couldn't live together. He was very bitter, and the viewers resonate with that. So my question to you is, the marriage institution breaking down, or generally would you say it's still working?
Marriage is, from a Christian perspective, which is mine, was God's idea. God created marriage before He created anything else. In far as institutions, before He created the church or before He created government, He created marriage. It's the basic building block for all human institutions. And I think that we've had problems in marriages from the time of Adam and Eve up until now, that this is nothing new. I think we have new pressures and new issues, and there's a transparency that wasn't always there before. I think that it's right that probably the number of divorces is on the rise in Kenya and in many places of the world. But I don't know if that means that we're having more bad marriages. I just think that before, maybe in certain cultures here, people didn't go to court and get a legal divorce. They put up with bad marriages, or they just got other ones and they just continued. So if you look at the statistics, you might find that yes, the number of divorces being granted in the courts has been increasing. But I don't know if that necessarily means that there's more bad marriages than there used to be. I think there's probably been bad marriages all along.
I want to ask you the question, what to you is a bad marriage?
A bad marriage is where, there could be a lot of things that make for a bad marriage. The foundation of a bad marriage is really bad communication, where people are not hearing each other. They're not making sense out of what the other one's saying and doing, where there's no shared vision for the marriage, shared vision for where they're moving forward. And the important word there is shared, that people know each other. They know where they see this marriage is going, and so forth. It doesn't mean that everybody has to be exactly the same. We have the exact same vision, but that we've shared, we understand each other. I think bad marriages are marriages where there's really bad communication. Bad marriages are also marriages where there's interference, either from third parties. Someone is interfering in the marriage. You've got somebody outside who's trying to worm their way into a relationship with one of the others. Or sometimes you have extended family that is putting very heavy pressure on a marriage to be a certain way. So there's sometimes bad marriages result because of these outside interferences. But the bigger issue is poor communication. Another really big issue is people who get into marriage with very different assumptions about where the marriage is going and what the marriage is going to be like. They got into marriage and thinking, well, this is the way it'll be. But the way one person thinks it'll be, or assumes it'll be, and the way the other partner thinks it's going to be, aren't necessarily the same. And so when they have these very different assumptions and then those assumptions clash, that can make for a really, really rough marriage. Maybe bad marriage is not the best word for it, but a marriage where there's a lot of issues to be dealt with.
You mentioned those issues, and I'm thinking, how would I get to know that I'm just about to get into a bad marriage? Are these lessons being taught?
Well, I think in a lot of urban, suburban, peri-urban areas in Kenya today, a lot of the Christian churches are offering what are typically called premarital counseling or premarital classes, helping people to prepare themselves for marriage. And my wife and I, we run a ministry where we do this. We run these kinds of courses for people. We have found, though, that most people that have gotten to the point where they are planning their wedding, okay? They're not thinking about getting married. They're beyond that. So they're planning their wedding. They're picking color schemes. They're, all these things. Now they're involved in this premarital counseling course. And they're very much in love, which is the way it ought to be. And they're very happy. And when you bring them in for this 5 or 10 week course and you're working with them, helping them to think through things, it's a little hard. It's hard for them to focus on those issues because they're really focused on the wedding and getting married, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with focusing that way. But what we have found is, my wife and I run a ministry we call Reality Check, where it's a program that's very similar to premarital counseling, but we do it with couples that have been married anywhere from a week up to 5 years, of first 5 years of marriage. And we basically take the same material that we do with a premarital counseling course, But now we take the same couples who've been married for a short period of time, up to 5 years, and take them through the same material from the point of view now that, okay, you started experiencing marriage. Now you know what, the rubber has hit the road. Let's do a reality check and see what's actually happening. And we actually find that these kinds of training, when people are just getting into a marriage, they've just been in it for a short time, actually has a very long beneficial effect for marriages, even more than the premarital.
You know, my other question, as you mentioned in this, is there room for rectification, if I may use that? Because I just got into this marriage. Let me assume I'm coming for the reality check, and I'm just 5 weeks old in my marriage, and I'm thinking, I may have made a mistake or something. Is there room for that? Because if it's from the Christian perspective, this is not allowed. I'm not allowed to, say, I think I had made a mistake.
I think that once you've made that commitment to somebody and before God, that is something you have to work on very hard and to make it happen.
So marriage for you is work?
Well, it ought to be a joy. I mean, you do media, you do television and radio,
yes.
And your work, I think, is your joy. You love doing it.
Yes.
And so, yes, it's work, but it's your passion as well. It's what gets you up in the morning at 3:30 and to get off to the studio and do the things you need to do. So, marriage is work, of course it is, but it ought to be a joy. It ought to be something that just gets you excited about making my marriage the best possible marriage.
I know this is not even scripted, because now as you're speaking, many things are popping into my head. Are there levels of tolerance that, if it gets to here, no?
I don't think people should put up with violence in their homes. That if someone is at risk of being hurt, or your children are at risk of being hurt physically, and that there's some kind of a real abuse going on in the home, that you need to make yourself safe and you need to make your children safe. And sometimes that may mean that you have to withdraw from the home for a period or who knows how long. And I think that if you have a spouse that is abusing the covenant of marriage. In other words, this person is living a lifestyle that's outside the marriage covenant. Okay, they are they're running around with other people. They are not committed to a monogamous relationship. And this is a lifestyle behavior. And they don't see anything wrong with it. They feel like, hey, hevio and devio e levio. This is just the way it is. So. Maybe there you need to send a message to your spouse. This is unacceptable, and this cannot continue in our marriage. And we're going to have to find a way to either, you're going to have to either change, or we're going to have to find a way to solve this on a permanent basis. I'm not at all in favor of divorce. I think, though, that there are extreme cases where it's extremely sad. It's not like you would say, oh, well, that's the recommended answer. No, the recommended answer is people to get their lives in order, people find reconciliation, people find a way forward. And if you're committed to your partner, then that's what you ought to do.
All right, general statistics have it, all across the statistics that I came across, they're talking about, marriages that end within the first year. And for that, I would like to ask you, because you've seen it all, what are these factors that lead to the decline, or to the death of marriages? The 5 factors that I had you mentioned sometime.
Well, there's the 5 big issues that people fight over, or they have problems in their marriage over. Finances is one of the biggest. Sex is a big issue. Children and how to raise and how to deal with children is a big issue. Careers and where careers are going, people's careers, and how the issues they bring into the home. And then, especially here in our context here in Kenya, extended family pressures and issues that are put on family. These are things that are major issues, major sources of conflict, and they can be major sources of blessing, but they're also major sources of conflict, where people don't tend to fight so much over what color we should paint the sitting room. You know, you're not going to get a divorce over that. Yeah. But you're going to get people are going to fight and have major problems in their marriage over these five big. Wow. These are the real Kenya big five. Yeah.
I like the five because it resonates with the research that was done, and I read it on the 21st September 2015. It was on the Business Daily. And this is what they say, that out of the top 4 reasons identified as reasons why marriages fail, 3 were linked to wealth, infidelity, cruelty, and polygamy. And I think they very much tie into that. And that being the result, is there an emphasis placed on the wedding day rather than marriage? Do you think that's the culture where we just want to have the pomp and color, and then after that never thought about it?
I think for young couples that are getting married, weddings are, and they should be, they're a wonderful time of celebration. And people plan for them. They pick their colors, their clothes, they pick the music, they pick the food. They know who to invite and who they don't want to invite, and so forth. And this is the way it should be. It should be a wonderful day. And it shouldn't be entered into ovio. It shouldn't be done carelessly. At the same time, a wedding is not synonymous with a marriage. A wedding lasts a day in most cultures. Weddings should last a lifetime. Wow. So we should put even much more emphasis into building marriages as we do into planning weddings. I think a lot of times, and it's quite understandable that people think about their wedding as they're getting ready to get married. They think about those things more than they think about, well, what will we do if our children are having these kinds of, what will they do if, 10 years down the line, I get a job offer to go work in the Middle East, and my spouse gets a job offer to go work in South Africa. Now what are we going to do? How are we going to handle this? People aren't thinking about those big issues as they're planning for their wedding. And to some extent they shouldn't have to, but they should be thinking about those issues as they're going through a premarital counseling program and helping them prepare for their future life together.
All right, fair enough. We want to take a break, but when we come back, you'll address these matters of where people or couples have been getting advice, because there's a lot of influence from the media, the movies we watch and such things. We take a break on the talk. We'll be right back to discuss these matters marriage.